I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be talking about the fantastic film War Pony. We are joined by writer and director Riley Keough, writer and director Gina Gammell, as well as co-writer Frank Sue Bob and co-writer Bill Reddy. And I really love the genesis of how the four of you started creating this film, where it wasn't necessarily the initial intention of we're planning to make a feature film, but it was very much just playing around artistically, making short films, making pieces, experimenting with virtual reality. And I was just really interested in the genesis of how it went from this really creative, playful space into really finding more of a structure of a feature film that you all were on the same page about wanting to create together.
Yeah, I think that started just having like an acknowledgement of how rich and potent Frank and Bill's stories were. And I think after years of kind of playing and just being young together, I guess. I don't know who made the first step, but I think that
I don't
someone,
know. I actually don't remember. Like I don't remember when we actually started writing.
yeah, it just transitioned. It was kind of this natural transition into like, hey, we actually have something. And do we try and now turn this into like a narrative structure that makes sense for a film or a book or anything? Like, I think that it was like, but it
I
was.
think I think I secretly think Gina was. I mean, I think Gina was secretly writing a little personal book. You know what I'm saying? She's always got her computer and she's going like this, watching us, and she's like, "Hey."
I think what Bill's saying is like when things were happening that we found like funny or interesting, like we would go into our phone and just kind of like write it in notes or go on the computer and say like, or like Bill said something funny and like I don't know, we would just kind of write things down that would catch our attention. And then I think that really like the day that Beast died, the dog in real life, that was kind of like a really crazy day. And we were filming, actually, we were filming VR stuff that day. And I think that that moment like was the first um, like scene we wrote. And it was based off of, a real experience that Bill had that we were there for. And um, yeah, so I think that was like the first proper scene we had. And then we kind of just kept writing like random scenes we would find, and we had all kinds of weird ideas. And like we didn't, yeah, but I don't think this story really came together until like 2018 or something.
I think that's right. I think that Beast dying became the first actual scene, and then there was all this life and stories and experiences we'd had together that the rest kind of just flowed into that.
I really, really love that. And when it comes to the visual style of the film, I love the fact that it is this very intentional kind of like sticks and dollies. It's not kind of just going, we want this scene to look a little bit gritty, so we're going to pull a handheld camera in. You kind of moved away from that. And so Gina and Riley, from a directing standpoint, I was interested in how you specifically landed upon wanting it to be that, kind of the camera was finding moments in front of the camera that were very specifically blocked out within scenes versus really just having more of an improvisational feel in terms of movement.
I think that like well, firstly, like Frank and Bill made it very clear that they didn't want it to feel like poverty porn or like an ugly portrayal of Pine Ridge, and that was something that was really important to us. We wanted to reflect that in the camera.
Like the music video that we did, saying it really, I guess it kind of like inspired me. I was like, this shit could be for real, because we were practicing. I think you said something like, are you interested in a career in acting, or like movies or whatever? So we did a lot of practice acting, and then it more turned into a story about Pine Ridge. Like we were kind of getting like me and Frank prepared, I guess, to maybe doing something outside of Pine Ridge, getting familiar with the cameras, and then that's whenever stuff started happening during the little short scenes that we were filming. And I think Gina and Riley like decided like, oh, this could go somewhere, like we could make this into a movie. So I kind of sort of think that's like the ideas came from.
We were kind of trying to understand like what they wanted the film to look like. And I think he said he didn't like the shakiness, like the handheld quality. So we decided then, after Frank kind of saying, you know, Frank was very much like, this cannot be, you know, versions of Pine Ridge I've seen that feel like sad and poverty porny. And then Bill was like, I don't like handheld. So I think like that, those conversations dictated like camera and the way we wanted it to feel more composed and beautiful. But also, I think we wanted to like, we wanted the scenes to feel improvised and feel super authentic, but we wanted it to all be scripted. And I don't know in hindsight if that was just like a challenge that we wanted to give ourselves, but we did like a lot of what Bill was just talking about, like where we would just film them, like we would give them sort of improv scenes, like Bill and Frank or Bill and Jesse or whoever, and say like, okay, this just happened and now what happens? And a lot of the scenes were written that way. Like they would play it out and do improv, and then we would write like great moments that they made up on the spot. And then those would go into the script. And then once we hired other actors, we did the same. Like we would rehearse and they would improv a little and then take some stuff from the page and make it their own. And so it was a combination of like them making up, you know, or their improv, and then like actually a lot of people's improv. It was a combination between like Frank and Bill's original improv, and then like Jesse and JoJo coming in to play the characters and bringing their own, you know, voice to it. And but yeah, ultimately I think we just wanted like to treat it like we had, you know, professional actors who could do their job, because they certainly could, you know. And I think that it was a real accomplishment to us that people think that it was improvised a lot, and there's like I think there's like one moment of improv or a couple moments of improv.
Yeah, it really was just what Riley's saying, like a lot of rehearsals. Like we did all the playing in the writing and the rehearsing, and then by the time we were shooting, it was very, very on book. And I think that was for two reasons. I think it was partly because I think that there was something really empowering about it, and something that was in a strange way made someone freer, because it's not, the stress of improv is quite overwhelming, I think. But also because of, you know, following the lead of how Frank and Bill wanted it captured, and wanting to be so honest and have integrity and composition with our photography, that didn't leave, it would have made like, you know, finding the scenes or improvising the scenes quite difficult as well. But yeah, we had such incredible talented performers that they
also
really
saw like very quickly how quickly they would learn their lines and deliver them so beautifully that we were kind of like, okay, they're absolutely capable of being totally on book. And and that's something I think we're really proud of that they did.
I mean, I love that because the dialogue actually has, you know, this very authentic, like lived in feel to it with what you were saying. And Frank and Bill, I wanted to ask the two of you about a lot of the conversations within your community, because obviously you had both known Gina and Riley for a long time by the time this started coming to fruition and moving towards production. But I know that there were things like conversations with the elders within the community and making sure that everybody around felt very comfortable with, you know, having two people come from outside and making sure that the story was being told in the right way. So I was just very interested about a lot of the conversations that happened within your own community ahead of filming this.
I wasn't there for those conversations, but they were actually the first people to actually do it, as opposed to just coming, getting what they want, give you a little check here, and then go off and win the awards. So for them to actually go and give that or breach that conversation is bigger than what a lot of people would do. So, but I wasn't there for those because I haven't lived on the res since 2015. So yeah, I don't know. That's Gina and Riley's question. I wasn't there.
I think that like ultimately like we all made this for each other and for Frank and Bill and like everybody who is there in Northridge, and not for the whole of Pine Ridge, you know, like
yeah, this follows one subset of boys. It's not a representation of all the natives, because not all natives are like us. This is about us, our neighborhood kids, not this ain't all natives. I don't like when people get that misconstrued.
Absolutely. And, you know, I even love the way that there's so much in terms of imagery. And, you know, if you even look at things like the bison, it's not necessarily being didactic in the film of explaining what that imagery is, but through the emotional landscape of films, you understand it. And so did you find that by telling a very specific story and making very specific creative choices about what you were capturing on screen, that that's actually kind of what has made it have this much broader appeal, where, you know, anybody can sit there and watch it and really connect to the emotional tonality of a moment like that without it being a didactic explanation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that like we didn't want to explain things either. You know, like I think that we were, like I said, we always came back to like Frank and Bill and, you know, other friends of ours in Pine Ridge, and every, like the buffalo, for example, was like I think a conversation we had in LA where we were trying to figure out like something that would stop them in their tracks if they were going down a path that maybe wasn't the right one. And so we were kind of like, okay, well, like what could like appear that would maybe change your consciousness or like shift the way you were thinking a little bit. And I don't remember who said a buffalo, but then, you know, it would just, we'd put it into the script. So it was, nothing in the movie just came out of mine and Gina's mind. You know, it wasn't like our imagination. Everything kind of came out of their mouths and was put on the page. And I think that authenticity and the honesty in that and in their experiences is, you know, makes it resonate with people because it's truthful and it's funny and it's sad and it's, you know, it's kind of all those things, and honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think
like
it just cuts through. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was gonna say, I think like, you know, we wanted it to be like real. You know what I'm saying? Like we would share, we didn't want it to be like where we share a story and then you put a Hollywood twist on it to where that shit's not real, because it would have pissed a lot of people off on the reservation. You know what I'm saying? So it always came together whenever the stories were shared and the ideas were out there, and we would work together to where we had different perspectives from different people on the res, but we combined them together to where it really happened, you know? So like the thing like with the buffalo, like animals are a messenger for our people, and that's real. You know what I'm saying? Like people could relate to that shit not only on the reservation but worldwide, you know, like everybody has their own different beliefs and they know like spiritual connection is like for real. And I think like putting that in the movie, people could connect with it. You know what I'm saying? So like it's not people could look at it and be like, oh, that's some fake ass shit. Like they don't do that.
Yeah,
So,
it is an energy that goes with it. It's kind of like the love that went into making the film too. It infects the film, and I think that is very special.
And I love the way that, in essence, the central narrative is this coming of age, but it's two different iterations of what that looks like. It's, you know, what does it mean to have a coming of age in your early 20s, and what does it mean to be going through that as an 11-year-old boy? And it sounds like there were kind of like different conceptualizations of how to kind of interweave these stories, but you kind of keep the two of them apart throughout the film until towards the end, and yet they feel so connected throughout the entire film. So how did the four of you really work to make sure that there was this kind of kinetic connection between these two characters throughout the film, in the way that their two storylines are living side by side ahead of when they even collide in a scene together later on?
I think that there's two parts to that, because I think the first part is that like they were born out of the same stories. So they were born out of Bill and Frank's stories. And I think that there was a moment where we realized how integral their youth was to them as young men. So I think in some ways, Bill is Mato's future and Mato is Bill's history. But in the more literal way, I think that it's Pine Ridge, because the town is a living, breathing, loud character in this film, and a really, really important character in the film. And I think that they're walking the same streets, they're breathing the same air. So I think that they are very linked by Pine Ridge town and
Proximity. Like we always like to imagine that they're like in the story. I think
they're neighbors.
they live very close to each other, you know, and so it was like a proximity thing, and so there's that, and we had different versions where they met at different times, and they were more, the stories were more involved with each other, and then some where they never even met. But yeah, I think that Mato's story was also, Bill and Frank and our friend's childhood story. So it's the same people. So I think that's what allows them to feel like this, similar, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of off the back of that, for you, Bill and Frank, in kind of like looking at the storyline of Matto, and reflecting on your own experiences growing up, what felt important to capture in his journey and his story for both of you?
Growing up fast, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not by choice. Sometimes it's just your environment. You didn't ask to grow up fast. It's just what you had to do. And you see it. That's like Montel's character is an example. Bill's character is an example. Like they have that crossroads, and Bill could he sees him at the table, and he remembers being that young, that small, but now he is who he is. And it's like you can either take a left or you keep going where you're gonna go. And it's just going up fast. It's really not it's not it.
And for you, Bill?
Oh no, like for me, no responsibility comes at a young age. You know what I'm saying? See, whenever we're teenagers, we're barely making a teenager. We're babysitting our little brothers, little sisters, nephews. You know what I'm saying? Nieces, and we don't have no choice a lot of the times. So yeah, like Frank was saying, like we grow up quick and we learn these responsibilities at a young age, and it makes us who we are, I guess. And everybody lives that lifestyle around here, and not only here, but in other parts of the world too. Like they know, like whenever their parents are or anybody, their guardians are on drugs or alcoholics or whatever, they get left with watching their little brother, little sister, and or either taking on responsibilities of trying to make the home like a safe place or a stable environment. So a lot of people could relate to that, and it's universal, I guess I would say.
Yeah, and also like a lot of the relationships in the movie, like it was a lot of like father and son relationships, and that was very much inspired by Bill and his sons, and Frank and his father, and so all that sort of dynamic is I think very present as well.
Yeah, and also for you, Riley and Gina, I love the fact with Mato's storyline, the way that the camera comes down to meet him. So we're really seeing things through his perspective. So maybe there's a scene with him and his dad, but we don't even see his dad's face straight away. And so you really brought the camera down to his level and his perspective in terms of watching it. What made you kind of realize the importance of that being the perspective of the camera for his story?
I think it goes back to what we were saying before about just like honesty with the camera, like the same way that we approach a script, the same way that we approach the casting, the same way we approach every part of the process. Camera was just as important. And I think that we really, really know that it's a character-driven story. It's driven by these two young, a young boy and a young man. And I think that the same way that we had intention on only moving the camera because there was a reason for it to, motivation for it to be to move, or we're only cutting to an insert or something because there's something that a character's already seen. It's the same principle with bringing the camera down to him, and it kind of being, when we're in his story, his perspective.
Yeah. And I love the way that in working with the cast and kind of going back to the fact that it is a majority first time actors in the film, with what you were talking about with how you would write the script and constantly ask questions and dissect the language, that carried on through the way that you all worked with the cast as well, and being like, does this line feel authentic to you? Do you feel like this is how your character would say this, and giving the opportunity for feedback or editing lines ahead of time before going into production. And so I was just interested in kind of how you kind of like navigated through that and just made sure that was always part of the process, so that it wasn't even just a collaboration between the four of you, but with every single person who was part of creating a scene.
I think a really interesting version of that is that we had the character of Bill, who was written by Bill, and it was all of his. He was very much his voice, and then we had JoJo playing Bill because at that point we shot, these guys were much older and the characters have to be, 20, 21. And so then we had to make JoJo feel like Bill, like, the real Bill, but also feel like he had ownership over the role too. And that he wasn't just playing Bill and that he could find a way to relate to Bill. So, we would take these scenes, we had scenes that were written for Bill and in Bill's like very much in Bill's voice, and then JoJo would read them, and actually he does a really good job at feeling like Bill read, but he also would have little moments of wanting to add things in that felt more like him, and so he kind of did this really beautiful combination of like playing Bill and then adding a little bit of his like authenticity into it as well. And so, we would just adjust moments for him, like, or lines if he was like, well, I wouldn't really say it like that, and then
for a production that had like such little prep and like was so chaotic with everyone wearing so many different hats, like the one area that we really always gave time to was rehearsals, conversations, like time with the actors, time with our writers, time with our producers, like that part of it. We really rehearsed and made sure that I don't think that I think that everything that came out of anyone's mouth was, something that I don't think anyone felt forced with any line in the movie. And so I think that we really put a lot of
except, what I will say, like, out of all of the characters, I think Frank, you played the most, like, because he plays Mato's dad, like the most different to you. Like, I feel like you played like the most of a character in the movie.
Yeah,
really cool to watch.
that.
Yeah.
And Frank, I wanted to ask you about filming the scene where essentially it's kind of like holding Matos like by his throat, and it's such a confrontational scene between him and his son, and the way that the camera captures that again just goes back to everything you've all been talking about, where it doesn't feel gratuitous in that moment, but we get the sense of the realism of the scene. And I was just interested in your experience in filming a moment like that carries so much weight for your character and for Matos.
It was different. I'm just by nature, I'm not a loud person, or I'm confrontational, but not in that in that element. So that one was different, and especially trying to beat up a little kid is different. I don't know. I couldn't mentally do that one because it was just hard. Like, I'm not down and out, nor am I wanting to beat the shit out of a kid. So it was just different, that one, because I was making the kids cry. That's what was hardest, was I was triggering these little boys, like, so it wasn't fun, that one.
That was a day we shut down a lot of we spent a lot of time on that day. We did shut down.
Yeah, I triggered some kids.
That was like one of the hardest days we actually had to shoot, because for one, like, it's a really heavy scene and Frank's not a yeller. Like, he's not like like that at all. So that was like, he was kind of like, I don't want to, I don't know how to do this. I mean, you did a very good job, but also we had like the little boys, who were taking their job so seriously, and like Ladanian would kind of go, well, this has never happened to me, but I know this happened to my friend, and I'm gonna like take myself there. And so they were, working with their acting coach and going to places that were hard for them, and so we had to take it really slow and like take a lot of breaks. And I think at some point we just like stopped because it was it was really hard.
Yeah, because we tried to. Well, Daniel was quite affected by it, and so we pulled in another one of the young boys to just double him for some of it, and then he was affected by it. And I think that we very quickly realized it was a very loaded scene for a lot of people. And so yeah, that was one of the one of the toughest days on production.
Yeah. And Bill, what was that experience for you in terms of getting to write a character that's based on facets of you, and then kind of working in collaboration with an actor who's then portraying it and finding all these additional kind of layers and textures in the way that they're performing it?
Well, I just wanted to start by saying, like, when we cast JoJo, or when we cast Bill, like I think we showed him a bunch of videos of like different actors, and we're kind of like, you know, this guy might play you, and this guy might play you, and I think like at one production meeting, I remember he sat down and he was kind of like, you know, he looks like he could be a Reddy or something.
Yeah, no, you show. I watched the videos of like 4 or 5 different people, and Gina and Riley are like, all right, oh, which one do you think will best fit you? And they didn't tell me that they had an idea first. They just let me watch the videos, and after we went through them, I picked out JoJo, and they're like, yeah, that's the same guy like we chose too, so we're gonna go with him.
Cool. They're very different people, but like I think that JoJo, like Bill has a side to him that's like very what's the word? Mischievous. And, uh, and JoJo has that too, and I think that like that was really special to find.
And I feel like for all of you, because of the creative process and because the way you kind of like formed this in the way that it needed for the story, so it wasn't necessarily about following, okay, this is the traditional way that we would usually write a script, this is the traditional way that we would usually do casting and production. I was interested in kind of like how it just connected to like this sense of like childlike joy, and like Riley, I've heard you talk before about just growing up and filming a lot of videos with your friends. And so for all of you, how did it kind of connect you to your childlike selves, and what made you fall in love with art, the idea of being artists and just creativity in a sense?
Well, so Jigsaw, whenever we did American Honey, me and Frank we were kind of like, I don't know the word, skeptical about it or something, because we didn't read no script and we didn't have no idea of like what to say, you know what I'm saying? And Riley told us, well, just be yourself. You know what I mean? Like, what would you normally say during a situation like this? And then like, all right, well, we'll say this and do this. And she's like, well, that's what you got to do then. You know what I mean? And that was during American Honey. And then whenever War Pony was coming about, it was the same situation. You know what I'm saying? It was the best way to get comfortable in front of the camera for like the kids and the other actors were just telling them like, you don't expect too much from yourself. Just be who you are. You know what I
And also,
mean?
and like I think that another thing is like the time in our lives when this was created was like really joyful. Like we were like 25 and 24 and 23, and
Yeah.
like it was really fun. And I think the joy of our real lives created the film in a way. And I think that, like I always say, that we just made this movie because we wanted to hang out. Like we didn't like, because we wanted to be with our friends, and um that's how it was created within like during a summer or a couple summers that were really fun, and
Yeah.
I think that carried through.
It really was that. It was like really, I've been saying it recently. I don't know why. Maybe I feel old, but like it's like the twilight of our youth in some ways. Like it's like it was really that feeling of like, say like, oh, work with your friends, but it wasn't even working with our friends. It was just like hanging out with our friends. And it kind of sustained that energy the whole way through. So any day like we were going, whether it was like doing a writing camp or, in that part of the process, or casting trips, or when we were shooting, it was still like, Billy.
It was like we'll hang out and then we'll write for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And Billy pulls up in his car, and then Frank's going to get his hair braided. It's just like we're all just kind of existing and spending time together. And that has always, and even now when we're doing this stuff, like we like doing it because we like to see each other's faces.
And was that the same for you as well, Frank?
Yep. I don't remember the question.
Yep.
Oh shit.
I think it was just more or less, because in a way, you kind of just like the creation of this film and then everything people watched. It was just unearthing so much trauma for not only us, but so many other people, because so many people are still living this lifestyle right now. So if they could watch a film and see that, then it's like, okay, well, shit, it's not all bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, because the whole film's triggering to me. I'll watch it back and it's like, it's just triggering to me personally. But yeah, I don't know. This is just a trippy experience overall.
Well, for me, like for the emotional standpoint and stuff, I believe I think the year I met, let's see, I hung out with Frank probably like what was it, like half a year or maybe a year before I met Gina and Riley. So me and Frank's relationship was still kind of new, you know what I'm saying? And it was different. Like at the time for me, like I just had to drop out of college and my grandma just passed away. So for me it was an escape from all that bullshit, you know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to be around Frank, I wanted to be around Riley, I wanted to be around Gina because it was all in good fun. You know what I'm saying? And it was different from all the bullshit that was going on the rest. Like, yeah, we work, we have jobs and shit, and that shit stresses us out. And whenever Gina and Riley come around, it's like they they put us in a spot to where we always have a good time. You know what I'm saying? And it was always fun. Like, and they just always captured it on camera or their phones or something. Yeah.
Well, there were lots of things we didn't capture on our phones.
There's a lot of things we did that should have told.
Well, it's such a beautifully shot film with really, really incredible performances from the entire cast. So congratulations on everything. And thank you so much. I really appreciate the four of you talking about it
I love
today.
your video.
Thank you so much.